Midnight. An abandoned railway station stood silent after 80 long years. Suddenly, a distant train whistle shattered the darkness. But according to every official record, no train had ever used this track again. Investigative journalist Ethan Brooks adjusted his camera. He wasn't chasing a ghost story. He was here to prove an old railway legend was nothing more than a myth. Then, the steel tracks began to vibrate beneath his feet. No train had ever used this track again. The vibration grew stronger. A cold wind swept across the empty platform. Then, a single beam of light appeared deep inside the fog. Ethan frowned. It wasn't a flashlight. It was a train's headlight. Seconds later, a massive black steam train emerged from the fog. It moved silently. No engine noise, no smoke. Just the slow rhythm of steel wheels. As it stopped directly in front of Ethan, the train doors slowly opened. Warm golden light spilled onto the empty platform. No conductor appeared. No passengers moved. The silence felt almost unnatural. Then, soft footsteps echoed from inside the first carriage. A little girl stepped off the train. She couldn't have been older than 10. She wore old-fashioned clothes. She looked directly at Ethan, smiled gently, and whispered, "You finally made it." Ethan lowered his camera. Do I know you?" The little girl shook her head. Her smile never faded. "Not yet. But one day, you will." Before Ethan could ask another question, 3 more passengers stepped off the train. They wore the same old-fashioned clothes. None of them spoke. They simply looked at Ethan, as if they had been waiting for him for a very long time. The oldest passenger finally stepped forward. His silver pocket watch ticked once, then stopped. He looked into Ethan's eyes and quietly said, "The train has been waiting for only one passenger. You." Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Ethan took one cautious step backward. "I don't even know who you are." The old man smiled. "That's true. But we know exactly who you'll become." The little girl quietly reached into her pocket and pulled out an old photograph. Ethan carefully took the photograph. His hands froze. It showed the same railway station, the same mysterious train, the same 4 passengers. And standing beside them was Ethan himself. But the date printed below read October 18, 2049. Ethan looked up in disbelief. "This isn't possible." The old man nodded calmly. "Neither is tomorrow, until it arrives." He slowly turned toward the train, then said, "Come with us, before time changes its mind." Ethan glanced back at the empty platform. His car was still parked outside. His camera was still recording. Everything felt real. Yet something deep inside him whispered, if you let this train leave, you'll never know the truth. Ethan took a slow breath, then stepped onto the train. The door closed behind him without a sound. Instantly, every window turned completely black. Outside, the station disappeared. There was only darkness. Ethan looked through the nearest window. Nothing. No stars, no moon, no tracks. Just endless darkness. Then, tiny glowing lights began appearing outside. They weren't stars. They were entire cities. Ethan whispered, "Where are we?" The little girl looked out the window and smiled. Not where, when. Ethan frowned. Before he could speak, every clock inside the train began spinning wildly. Every clock stopped at the exact same second. Silence filled the carriage. Then, the train gently slowed down. Outside the window, a city appeared. It looked strangely familiar. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. It was his hometown. Ethan pressed his hand against the glass. "That's impossible." The little girl nodded. "It hasn't happened yet, but it can." Just then, Ethan noticed something on the city's tallest building. A giant digital clock. It displayed the year 2049. The train stopped without a sound. The doors slowly opened. "Come," the old man said. Ethan hesitated, then stepped outside. The air felt strangely warm. Everything looked familiar, yet nothing was exactly the same. Ethan slowly walked through the silent streets. Suddenly, he stopped. Hanging on the wall of a nearby building was a giant bronze statue. He looked closer. His face turned pale. The statue was him. Ethan stepped closer to the monument. At its base, a single sentence was carved into the stone. He read it aloud. "The man who saved tomorrow." Ethan's mind raced. Saved from what? No one answered, but the old man quietly smiled. The little girl gently took Ethan's hand. "There's something you need to see." She led him toward a quiet museum. The doors opened automatically. Inside, every photograph, every newspaper, every memory was about Ethan Brooks. Ethan stopped in front of a glass display. Inside rested his old camera. The same scratch, the same broken lens cap. It was impossible. He was still holding that camera. Right now. Ethan slowly lifted his own camera. His hands trembled. The two cameras were identical. Even the cracked corner matched perfectly. The old man finally spoke. That camera recorded the day the world almost ended. The old man unlocked the display case. He carefully placed the camera into Ethan's hands. "Watch it." Ethan pressed the play button. The screen flickered. Static filled the display. Then, a familiar face appeared. It was Ethan, but much older. The older Ethan looked straight into the camera. His face was tired. His voice barely steady. "If you're watching this, you still have time." He paused, then whispered, "Don't let train 407 reach the bridge." Ethan lowered the camera. Train 407. The number echoed in his mind. The old man nodded. "The accident hasn't happened yet, but it will, unless you change one decision." Ethan stared at him. Whose decision? The old man answered quietly, "Yours." Ethan shook his head. "I've never even heard of Train 407. The little girl stepped closer. "You haven't. Because tomorrow is the first time you will." The museum faded around them. Ethan suddenly found himself back inside the train. But something had changed. Every passenger had disappeared. Every seat was empty. Only one envelope rested on the table beside him. Across the front was his name. Ethan carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line made him stop breathing. "Dear Ethan, I'm writing this because I failed." The signature at the bottom was his own. Ethan unfolded the second page. His older self had written only one warning. "Tomorrow, a little girl will board train 407. If she dies, millions will." Ethan whispered, "Who is she?" A soft voice answered behind him. "Me." Ethan slowly turned around. The mysterious little girl stood quietly in the aisle. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her eyes filled with sadness. "Tomorrow, I'm supposed to die." Ethan stared at the little girl. "How could your death change the future?" She looked down for a moment, then quietly replied, "Because one day I create something that saves millions of lives, but only if I survive tomorrow." The train suddenly shook. Every light flickered. Outside the windows, the future city began to disappear. Buildings dissolved into light. Streets faded into darkness. The old man stood silently. "Time is running out. You have to go back." The old man opened the carriage door. Blinding white light rushed inside. "When you wake up, everything will feel normal. But remember one thing. Never let train 407 cross Black River Bridge." Before Ethan could answer, the light swallowed everything. Ethan gasped for air. He was back. The abandoned station stood exactly as before. No train, no passengers, No golden light. Only his camera. Still recording. And his watch read 12:07 a.m. Ethan checked his camera. The recording was still running. With trembling hands, he played the footage. His own terrified voice echoed through the speaker. But there was no train, no passengers, only Ethan, standing alone, talking to empty air. Ethan's phone suddenly vibrated. A breaking news alert flashed across the screen. Passenger train 407 scheduled to cross Black River Bridge tomorrow morning. Ethan's breathing stopped. It wasn't a dream. Tomorrow had already begun. At sunrise, Ethan drove straight to Black River Bridge. Everything looked ordinary. Morning traffic flowed peacefully. No warning signs, no police, no danger. Yet deep inside, he knew disaster was only hours away. Ethan checked the railway schedule. Train 407. Arrival, 10:15 a.m. He looked at his watch. 10:03. Only 12 minutes remained. Then, his phone rang. The caller ID simply read, "Unknown." Ethan answered immediately. A familiar voice whispered, "Don't stop the train." Ethan froze. "Who is this?" The caller replied, "If train 407 stops, the bridge survives. But the city dies." The call disconnected. Ethan stood speechless. Save the train? Or save the bridge? Either way, thousands would pay the price. Then, a distant train horn echoed through the valley. Train 407 was coming. Train 407 burst into view. It raced toward Black River Bridge. Ethan's heart pounded. Suddenly, he spotted the little girl. She sat beside a window, looking directly at him, as if she had been expecting him all along. The girl slowly raised her hand. She wasn't asking for help. She simply smiled, then pointed beneath the bridge. Ethan followed her gesture. Hidden beneath the steel supports, someone was planting explosives. Ethan sprinted beneath the bridge. "Stop!" The stranger looked back and smiled. Without saying a word, he pressed a small remote. A red light began flashing beneath the bridge. The countdown had started. Ethan grabbed the man. They crashed onto the concrete. The remote slipped away and disappeared between the steel beams. The train horn grew louder. Ethan looked up. Train 407 was only seconds away. The saboteur suddenly laughed. "You're already too late." Ethan ignored him. His eyes searched beneath the bridge. Then, he spotted the remote. It was hanging from a narrow steel beam just above the raging river. Ethan climbed onto the narrow steel beam. Every second felt impossible. The river roared beneath him. His fingers finally touched the remote. At that exact second, Train 407 thundered onto the bridge. The blinking lights turned solid red. Time was almost gone. Ethan grabbed the remote. His thumb hovered over the only button. The old man's warning echoed. One decision changes everything. The train raced above him. The bridge trembled. Ethan closed his eyes and pressed the button. Silence. Nothing exploded. The blinking lights went dark. Train 407 safely crossed the bridge. Ethan smiled with relief. Then, the entire sky suddenly began to crack like shattered glass. Ethan stumbled backward. The cracks spread across the sky, faster and faster. Buildings in the distance flickered. Birds vanished in midair. Even the river seemed to freeze. Then, the little girl appeared beside him. You saved me, but you changed the wrong future. Ethan stared at her. What do you mean? The girl looked toward the bridge. The explosion was never the real disaster. She took a slow breath. The man you fought was trying to stop something even worse. Ethan looked toward the captured saboteur. He was gone. Only the black remote remained, lying on the concrete. Then, Ethan noticed something beside it. An old leather wallet. He opened it, and his blood ran cold. The ID card belonged to Ethan Brooks. Ethan slowly looked up. The little girl nodded. Yes, the man you fought was another version of you. He came back to protect the future. Ethan could barely breathe. Ethan's hands began to shake. If he was trying to save the future, then I destroyed it. The little girl slowly nodded. Not completely. She looked toward the sky. There's still one final chance. Without warning, the mysterious train whistle echoed once more. Ethan turned. The black steam train appeared again, floating above the bridge. The old man stood at the open doorway. He raised his hand. Come. This time, choose wisely. Ethan looked at the little girl. If I leave, will you be okay? She smiled gently. Don't worry about me. Worry about tomorrow. Ethan took one last breath and stepped toward the train. The train doors closed. Everything became silent. The old man placed the silver pocket watch into Ethan's hand. Every future begins with a single choice. The watch started ticking. For the first time, time began moving backward. Ethan opened his eyes. The train was gone. So was the bridge. He was standing back at the abandoned station. But this time, the platform clock was moving. It had finally come back to life. Ethan checked his phone. The date was different. 1 day earlier, he had been given a second chance. This time, he knew exactly what had to be done, and exactly what mistake he must never repeat. Ethan smiled quietly. In the distance, the first whistle of train 407 echoed once again. But this time, he didn't panic. He simply started walking. Because now, the future was finally in the right hands. Days later, Ethan stood on Black River Bridge. Trains crossed safely. People laughed. Children played nearby. No explosions, no broken future. For the first time, everything felt right. As Ethan turned to leave, he noticed someone sitting quietly on a park bench. It was the little girl. Alive. Happy. She smiled, then gave him a small wave, before disappearing into the crowd. Ethan smiled back. Then the station pocket watch in his backpack began to tick. One final time. He opened it. Inside, a single message had appeared. The future is never written. Ethan quietly closed the watch. He looked toward the endless railway tracks. Somewhere, a distant train whistle echoed. He smiled, turned away, and walked into the sunrise. Because every ending is simply the beginning of another story.